Terry, why is grammar not writing?
Okay. Um, when people ask me, what do you do? I say, I'm a writer, editor, I teach writing. Oh, my grammar's terrible. English is not my first language. I just no good at grammar. And people conflate grammar with writing. Okay, grammar it's important. You need some grammar, but it's just one of the many knowledge domains that you need to master, to be aware of, to be a writer. Grammar is not everything. People with a rudimentary knowledge of grammar can express themselves in writing very eloquently, and people who are, study textbooks on grammar, you can read their sentence 5 times and still not understand what they're saying. So don't confuse grammar with writing. Writing is it's a cluster of subroutines that includes reading, background reading, doing research, making notes, talking to people about what you're writing. That's part of the writing process. Drafting, revising, going back and doing more research. So that's one of the biggest obstacles I see with the people I work with, is this obsession with grammar.
Exactly. So grammar is just the technical aspects of it, but don't let that stop you from writing. So much more, basically.
Exactly.
All right. Well,
Yeah.
thank you.
Yeah, exactly.
And the second consideration I see here is when you're writing is to focus on structure.
To get past that focus on grammar, you really need to focus on structure. And what I mean by structure is everything written has a structure, right? This is what genre is all about. Everybody knows the structure of an introduction in a research paper, right? But people don't know the microstructure, right? So everybody says, "Oh yeah, introduction to a research paper," or an M&E report or a proposal. Oh yeah, you've got to have background and rationale, and you've got to have method and objectives. Those are headings. That's not structure. In the opening of a research paper, the structure would be, think of it in terms of moves. The first move is you establish the field. What is it we're talking about? I'm talking about the role of moisture in composting. And the second move is to identify what is the problem that you're working on. And then you're going to, in the third move, outline your solution, and then in the fourth move, you would indicate how you're going to go about doing the research. Another structure that is actually very useful in the kind of writing that we all do is the inverted pyramid. And if you read newspapers, you will be familiar with the inverted pyramid. So newspaper journalists are in the habit of giving you the most important points right at the beginning, right at the top, right? They begin with the conclusion, if you will, and then as they go down, they add more detail. And the rationale for that is that if readers lose interest after the first paragraph or the second paragraph, they have the most essential points in what it is you're trying to say. So there are structures for everything. If you're ever wondering, where to find a structure, then you just go to your browser and you type in structure for progress report, structure for lost property report, structure for conclusion of a proposal, anything like that, template, structure, format. You can use all of those terms, and you will find all kinds of structure. Once you've got structure, you can do anything. If I said to you, Anne, I want you to write an article for the Economist science section, and you would say, what? How do I do that? And if you go to the Economist science section and examine any article, pick an article at random, examine it, and just look at, what is the writer doing in that first paragraph? Why is he saying that in the first paragraph? Why is he saying that in the second paragraph? Then what you're doing is you're uncovering the structure, and then you just follow the structure. It's like Lego blocks.
Yeah, I love it. And the structure that I think is really good for evaluators, because that's my background, is a lot of times the evaluation report has to have your findings and recommendations. So I like the inverted pyramid structure wherein you lead with what are the most important findings, so that if people do not have time to comb through your 100 pages, usually we say, okay, the executive summary, but not just the executive summary. Your document itself should have some structure that whoever is interested in the findings, they can find it easily, or the recommendations, they can find it easily, or on your methodology, they can find it easy. So just to have some structure indeed. And we will come back to this point later on in the presentation as well. So I think we need to make it clear that some of these points overlap. So it's not like discrete, because later on the structure will come back again. But thank you, Terry.
Exactly. Yeah. I just, if I may just stop, and we've got some comments here. Fatima says, what are the basic conditions of the report structure? We'll get to that in a minute. About the inverted pyramid, tedious, I hope I pronounced that correctly. Isn't that the executive summary, what the executive summary does? And for project proposals, that would be the project summary. You could use that structure for executive summaries, and yeah, you could. It would be a very good structure for a summary. I always say, like nine out of 10 executive summaries I read are a summary of the whole report. Okay, and I say to people, no, it's not a summary of the report. It's a summary for the executive who does not have a lot of time to read, the whole thing. Like, so the inverted pyramid would be very useful there. Newspaper structure, Anne says, the newspaper structure would be most interesting part come at the end, where we have the rationale. Interesting on the newspaper structure. We've got something. In reports, would the most interesting part come in the end, where we have the rationale, justification, problem statement, the opposite of the newspaper one. That is the traditional structure for a research report, but not every report is a research report. And you may have something to add about this. That I think graduate school has got a lot to answer for. I think the way people learn to write in graduate school, which is really by themselves with little or no guidance. What I did when I did my master's thesis, I went to the library, I found a thesis from a senior in my field, I looked at what he did, I copied what he did in terms of the structure, and that's what everybody does. And what people tend to do is write everything, no matter what it is, in the same way. So structure for the research report, yes, and that would be the traditional way of organizing it. But for an M&E report, you might not want to do that, okay? And what else? Best structure for a policy brief towards decision makers who do not have a lot of time. And what do you say about that? The best structure for a policy brief?
Well, I think be guided by your target audience and what you want to communicate. Just like with grammar can become a straitjacket that stifles you even writing in the first place. My answer to that is, rather than focusing too much on which is the right structure, be guided on what your aims are. So for policy brief, if it's for a busy policy maker, I would start with the most salient point, the most important thing you want a busy policy maker to know upfront, back it up with some evidence. But I love the inverted pyramid structure, because with everything nowadays, people's attention spans are limited. For academic journals where you have more time, then you can use different structure. But that would be my short short
Yeah,
enough answer
yeah.
to that question.
And for policy briefs, there are basically two flavors of policy brief. There's the advocacy brief, where you are trying to persuade a reader to your point of view, and then there's the policy brief where you're basically laying out all sides of the issue and leaving it to the reader to make up their own mind. So you have to be clear on your purpose. You know, am I trying to persuade you to agree with me, or am I trying to give you the very basic elements you need to think about?
And to make so is it for informational purposes, or is it to influence and convince?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay, so Theodora, I hope that answers your question. If not, come back again. It's very small print. That's why I'm doing this. Yeah. Madati, thank you for sharing. I have a question. English is not my native language. You have references on software that helps me find the right words. Oh boy. Yes. The first thing you can do is, if you're using MS Word, right-click on the word and go down to click synonyms, and you will find synonyms for that word. It's not great. Sometimes you click on a word that's being used as a verb, and it gives you synonyms for the noun form of the word. If you go to the internet and look for visual thesaurus, you will get this beautiful display. You type in a word, you get this beautiful display that pops up and expands all the different words that go along with that particular word. That's not your first language. Believe me, that's an issue. It's not just because English is not your first language, although that's an added degree of difficulty. I often struggle to find just the right word, and Anne, you've probably had that experience as well.
Yes.
What
Always.
do you? Yeah. So what do you do? What do you do for when you're looking for just that right word?
Just Google search for synonyms. That usually helps.
Yes, that works
that
as well.
usually helps. Right. But keep the question coming, guys. I've already moved on to the next slide because I want to get as much information.
Okay. Yeah. Write it like you would say it?
Yes.
Okay. One of my favorites. Think of writing as speech made visible. Okay. And people say, what? Speech made visible? What do you mean? Well, if you watch a movie, everything the actors say was written first, and they are making the speech visible on the screen. All the world's great speeches were written before they were spoken. They were written to be read, specifically to be read. And what a lot of people have had this misconception that writing has to be formal. It's got to be, it's got to be academic, and you've got to use, you shouldn't say help, you should say assist, and you can't say need, you should say require. And it's just people just torture themselves trying to write like a professor, and it's totally unnecessary. If you write, if your first draft, write it like you would say it to somebody. That 9 times out of 10, that makes a great first draft. If you need to adjust the register, the tone later on, it's much easier to do if you've started off with a plain English version, a very simple version, rather than try to be the professor right off the bat. So I do that a lot. The other thing I do is I read my text out loud. Okay. Sometimes the language can be the first obstacle for writing a report. What are the strategies to be used for your report? Looks very nice. And when you read out loud, you hear the words through your ears, whereas when you just read without speaking, you hear the words in your brain, but you don't hear it through your ears. You don't hear it how it's going to sound in somebody else's brain. And actually, MS Word on the review ribbon has a button called Read Aloud. So you click that, it reads your text for you, and you get a real sense of the cadence and the rhythm of the language and how it's going to sound in somebody's head. It's a really, really powerful tool. It can really help people with their writing. It helps me with my writing.
Yeah, that's a good tip, Terry, because I use that facility, that tool in Microsoft Word to be read back to me. And a lot of things I didn't catch, because sometimes when you're writing a document for too long, you don't see things. I struggle with typos. I do. And repeating words. I struggle with that.
Well, good. Good. Because what that means is it means you're focusing on your meaning. It means you're focusing on what you're trying to say. And when you're typing, you know, we go back and we delete and then we write again and we copy and paste and we cut and paste and we move stuff around. You're going to have a lot of litter left lying around. Okay, don't worry about it. When you read only, when you read with your eyes, your brain sees what it thinks should be there.
Okay.
When you read as you listen, as you listen to the words being spoken by that read aloud function on the review ribbon, it's like stereo. And if there's a mismatch, you're going to catch it immediately, right? It's especially useful for words that are missing. Okay. You know?
So what about people who? So useful tip, guys: read aloud or get a software to read back what you have written to you. But apart from that, why is it you think that person struggle with writing like they would say it? In my experience, I've come across persons who think they might not come across as schooled or intelligent if they don't use big words in the documents. So they have to sound formal, or maybe formal speech has no place in technical reports. How can you help someone deal with that? Like still being conversational in the tone, using not so big words, but still to be taken seriously as a writer?
There's a style of writing called plain English, and plain English is exactly that. It strips out all the clutter and the junk and the big words, and it's not simplistic English, right? It's not simplified English. It's plain. The meaning is in plain sight. So when you clear out all the junk, it's much easier for the reader to get your meaning. And when the reader gets your meaning, they're not concerned that you said help instead of assist. They don't care. Okay, they want the meaning. It's like cleaning the windows in your house. Okay, you've got a nice view outside, right? But you know, after what month are we in now? Yeah, after several months, the windows get all covered in dust and grime and bird droppings, and the window is your page. Okay, you want the look through the window to the view outside. The view is your meaning. All right. So when you clean the window, the viewer doesn't see the window. They see the view outside. They see the meaning. And it's the same way on your page. When you clean out all the junk, the reader sees through the page to your meaning. And they say, gosh, Anne-Marie writes really well. She's so clear. You know, I get her meaning right away. She's a great writer. Okay. Nobody cares about your grammar or, you know, big words, really.
Right. And that example you used, is it a metaphor or an analogy? Analogy. Which is it? With the
Well,
window.
let's see. Okay.
I always mix them up.
Okay, well, okay. Simile, analogy, and metaphor are all comparisons. Okay, they're all ways of comparing things. Analogy is a direct comparison. The window is like the page. Okay, that's a simile because I use the word like. Okay, if I just said the window is your page, then it's an analogy. Right. The only difference is the word like or as. Okay, a metaphor is using a part of one thing to represent another thing. So if I say, for example, before our webinar tonight, I had butterflies in my stomach. Okay, so you know what I mean is I was nervous. Okay, I don't actually have butterflies in my stomach. Okay, but I'm taking the fluttering of the butterfly's wings, because you know how they dance around like that, right? I'm taking that aspect of the butterflies and using it to describe my physical state. Okay, so that's a metaphor. There's an absolutely wonderful book everybody should read by George Lakoff and Mark Johnson called Metaphors We Live By. And all language, every language is metaphorical in nature, right? And all our metaphors are rooted, grounded in our physical interactions with the world and with other people. So, you know, when I say I'm feeling down, well, when you're down, when you're ill, you're lying down, right? You know, you know, I feel like my head's going to explode. You know, it's not really going to explode, but there's pressure. I feel pressure. So I highly recommend that book.
Could you type the name in the chat, please?
Yeah, I will. Yeah.
I got the title, but I didn't catch the names in case persons. Oh, Maria typed it already for us. Thank you.
Oh, okay. Terrific. Yeah.
Thank you,
okay.
our co-host.
Oh, good. Okay, so she knows that. Yeah. Just let's catch up on some of the comments, because I don't want people to feel we're neglecting them. How do you tell donors about challenges or obstacles in a program through reports without making them worried, but still ensuring accountability to your reports? Anne, what do you say?
All right, let's me look at the question. All right, challenges and obstacles without making them worry. It goes back again to using, well, knowing your audience and using the proper language. We'll touch on it later on in the presentation. I promise you, just wait a bit, because there's a section where Terry talks about the use of language. So instead of using a lot of negative adjectives, negative words, you can use more positive sounding words so you don't scare the donor or who is reading it, right? But we'll come more into that later on. All right. Is there anything else coming through the chat? Because we have quite some ground to cover.
There's lots of great comments here. Genevieve says, I use the read aloud tool in MS Word too, very helpful. Gloria says, you mentioned I can write as I speak about these types of writing, like business writing, academic writing, scientific. How will I arrive on those types of writing if I will write as I speak? For business writing, you absolutely should write like you would say it. Okay, people in business just do not have time to you know, wade through your long, polite introduction. They just want to know, what do you want? Okay, so tell me what you want. That's it. You know. That's definitely, it's the plain English style of writing. People should go look that up. Actually, you know, the Netherlands, the UK, Australia, the USA, France and Germany, a lot of countries actually have legislation saying that government officials must write in plain English so people can understand them. Okay. And again, plain English is just saying it in as few words as possible. Right? That's the trick. You just go back and you look at, what can I, one of my favorite quotations, you're not finished writing when there's nothing left to add. You're finished writing when there's nothing left to delete.
That's a good one. That's
a very good guideline. Yeah.
Okay.
So Gloria, just keep at it. Cut everything you can. All the best writers will tell you that their secret to success is revising. All right. It's another misconception about writing. There's this notion that good writers, it just pops out of their head like Venus on a shell. It's just comes out all finished and beautiful and polished. And there's actually the reason that goes back to a time when people wrote on parchment with quill pens, and you dipped your pen into the ink well, and you sharpened your feather quill, and if you made a mistake, you had to go back and start all over again. And parchment was expensive, right? And it was a very laborious process. You had to mix your own ink. So what people did is they spent a lot of time composing in their head, and it's like they memorized what they wanted to write in their head. And then when they started actually composing, they were composing from a script that they had in their head. So people who were good at that, it looked as if the first thing they wrote was the perfect thing, but you didn't see, the hours and hours and hours that they spent composing in their head. So don't be afraid to revise, which is back to your point earlier, Anne, about, everybody makes typos and mistakes and leaves litter in their writing. Don't worry about it. When you get near the end, you go back, you revise, you catch a lot of it, and then near the end, you do a copy edit and a proof, and you pick it all up.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. And this next slide touches on the question that the person asked about their donor and how can you write evaluation report so it doesn't scare them. Yeah.
Well, I think you're in a better position to answer that, because you're the one who writes a lot of those reports. What would you say?
All right. Well, to use your example here with this slide, reframe negatives as positives. So instead of using words like lacking, inadequate, insufficient, deficient, scarce, there's unavailable resources, inadequate funds, you can rephrase it to more positive language, like with additional funding and additional human resources, we'll have adequate supplies and more. So we're saying the same thing, but instead of saying there's not enough money, we're saying with more money, this is what we could do.
Yeah.
So yes, how could you add to that, Terry?
Yeah. Well, when you're asking for money, when you're writing a proposal, you have to, there is a problem. There's something that needs fixing, something that needs improving, something that needs building on, okay? Earlier I talked about the structure and the introduction on a research paper. The way you establish the problem is by claiming centrality, which means this is really important, okay? Nutrition in preschool kids in Laos is really a major factor in their success in school, okay? Notice I didn't say nutrition is really bad, they have no nutrition, okay? It's a major factor in their success in school. So I've reframed it as a positive. There is a problem, okay? And here's my solution for addressing that problem, which in this case is a gap, okay? That there's a gap between the nutrition now and the nutrition where we think it should be, where we would like it to be. Or maybe it's a case of I want to build on something, okay? My Rotary Club has a scholarship program. We have 89 scholarships for students in poor families. Okay, those students in Thailand, as many other countries, the digital divide is growing. Okay, so we would like to build on the scholarship program by training our scholarship students to be youth leaders and equipping them with devices that they can use to access digital learning and share with their friends. So obviously there's a problem that needs fixing or something that needs done. You can't gloss over that, right? But I think this is, I mean, I've read proposals that by the time I got to the end of the page, like I just wanted to go hang myself. It was so bleak, the situation was so hopeless. Like,
not literally, yes.
No, not literally. No, that was a metaphor. Yeah.
See, thank you. We are using a metaphor, right?
Yeah, okay. So I hope that answered the question. Yeah.
Okay, great. Transition words now. You take this slide away.
Oh.
Yes.
Yeah, I blame high school teachers for that. In high school you get more points in the five paragraph essay. You get more points if you use lots of words like this, and on IELTS and TOEFL you get a higher score if you use lots of words like this. In most cases they add nothing to the meaning. You can delete them all and you don't change the meaning one little bit. Yes, there are times when a transition word is useful. Hardly ever any of the ones that I've shown here. But people, it's part of the feeling like I need to write like a professor thing, where you just feel like you have to start every sentence with a word like this, and all it does is get in the way. So take them out.
Okay. All right. Zombie writing. What is that? I like this image, by the way.
Oh, okay.
The Walking Dead.
This is one of my favorite things to edit out of the papers that I work on. People will end a sentence with etc. So I like apples, oranges, pears, bananas, etc. It's like, what else is there? It's a zombie writing habit. We pick it up. We see other people do it. We read other things from supposedly esteemed researchers and senior people, and we think, oh, well, it must be the way to do it. So we just drop an etc. at the end of every word. Etc. means more of a like kind. Okay, so it should only ever be used inside parentheses. Okay, never with such as. You don't say such as apples, oranges, bananas, etc. Because such as does the same thing. And probably not more than 3 items. Apples, oranges, bananas, etc. But if there are more of a like kind, and it's just to give somebody an indication of the category of things that you're talking about. That's all. Okay, it's not meant to be an exhaustive list. It should be used very sparingly. But we pick up. The main point of that slide was that we pick up so many of our writing habits just by reading stuff that other people write.
Yeah.
And there's so much bad writing in circulation that people just don't know what good writing looks like, right? And when they do see good writing, they look right through the glass to the meaning, and they don't even notice it, right? So.
All right. So be mindful of etc. and only use it in brackets,
parentheses.
right?
Yeah,
parentheses.
yeah.
Only parentheses. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you. Right. So Shakespeare said, to be or not to be? That is the question. So to acronym or not to acronym? That's the question.
Okay. Anne.
Yes.
What what is the purpose of an acronym?
Well, I just saw one FAQ in the chat. Sarah, what did you mean by FAQ, Sarah? Sarah wrote it in the chat. Can you send all the answers to the questions like a FAQ?
So, okay, we use an acronym as a short form for a long term. So, for example, if I'm writing about the Ministry of Population and Women's and Children's Services, if I have to write that 15 times in 3 or 4 pages, it's tedious to write. It's tedious to read. So I use the acronym. Okay. Now, what so many people do, and I have to say it drives me nuts. Every time they use the term, they define the acronym in parentheses following it. Okay. So they'll say the Ministry of Labor, MOL. Da 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 da. The Ministry of Labor, MOL. Da 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 da. Ministry of Labor, MOL, and on and on and on. And it defeats the whole purpose of the acronym, right? It's like you're using the acronym because it's easier for people to read. Okay, and people will turn common phrases into acronyms, and they're acronyms that are just ugly to look at. So whenever I'm editing, I just slash and burn acronyms right to the ground. I just cut them down to a stump.
Like the zombies. I'm picking up a theme in your image. Zombie, etc. Then you talk about hanging yourself. No, you're slashing.
I know. I better reframe that as a positive. Yeah.
Okay. All right. So acronym, does that like having a glossary helps?
Yeah, glossary is a different function. A glossary is like a little dictionary, right?
Okay.
It's a mini dictionary. Right?
All right.
So for example, I'm working on a rather large editing project with Asian Development Bank, and they're using a lot of Indian terms for example, Mandi is a market. Panyashat is a council, right? So there are English equivalents for those terms. So a glossary would be extremely useful for something like that, especially in a technical paper. You don't see them much.
All right.
They should be used more.
That little thing at the beginning of the report, what is that? List of acronyms then? What do they call it? That table?
List of abbreviations. List of abbreviations. Yeah.
Thank you, Terry. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So the list of abbreviations, that would maybe be helpful so persons can know what the acronym means in a document.
That's what it's intended for. Yeah. And ADB Style Guide actually has some very useful information on that, very, very good guidelines on that. So they say, for example, that if you haven't used an acronym, you define the acronym the first time you use the term, and thereafter you use the acronym in place of the term. If you haven't used it in the last 5 pages, you should define it again, because it's really asking the reader a lot to remember that CPDWF means something that you said 5 pages ago, right? So it's actually quite good advice. And what I will do a lot is define acronyms locally. So if there's a section where a term is used like 15 times in a page, in just that section, I'll define it once, use it in that 15 sections, but I won't put it in the list of acronyms, right? Because that's the only section it appears in. And if I define it locally and it's used locally, then the reader gets what they need.
Okay. All right, great. Anissa asked a quick question. Is that okay to put a glossary in a short report, such as a program report?
I can imagine situations where that would be useful. So if you are if your short report is about a technical subject or a subject that a lot of people might not be familiar with, and it uses a lot of terms or local words, then yeah, a glossary would be helpful. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Great. Shall we move on? Oh, there was more on this slide actually. So don't use the acronym every single time.
Yeah. Yeah.
Don't use an acronym unless you use a term more than 3 times in the body of the text.
Yeah. Yeah. That was the other rule. Yeah. Yeah.
Redefine the acronym if you haven't used it within the
Yeah.
last
Yeah.
5 pages. You said that, and
Yeah.
respect your reader's knowledge. If you're
Yeah.
writing about economics, you don't need to define GDP.
Yeah. I mean, really, or NGO. You don't. I mean, is there anybody in this business doesn't know what NGO means? I don't think so. You know,
Yeah.
it's like it doesn't need an acronym. It doesn't need defining.
If you're wondering about great ways to open your report, here are great ways to do it.
Yeah. The standard way, like the most common way I see reports beginning is Laos is a landlocked nation, bordered on the north by China, bordered on the south by Thailand and Cambodia, bordered to the east by, bordered to the west by that latitude. Its geography is, the climate is, it's like a Wikipedia page, you know? It's like,
Yeah.
like put that on Wikipedia, you know, like don't put it in your report.
Yeah.
You want to, you have like about 5 seconds to signal to the reader that this report is worth reading, okay? And you know, people say, oh, you've got to grab the reader's attention. Well, yeah, okay. How do we do that? Okay. Well, here are some ways you do it. Okay. You start with an apt quotation, or pose a question, or you give a scenario. And tell a you know, a 2 or 3 line story to make you're trying to make an emotional connection with the reader. Okay.
Yeah.
I don't care if you're writing about nanoparticles or grapheme or, you know, COVID-19 vaccines. If you can't make an emotional connection with the reader, it's just not going to happen, right? The reader's not going to stick with it.
I agree 100%. Like, I had a client last year and I was helping them to write their reports. And they had such moving stories from survivors, right? Survivors who had gone through trauma and abuse. And I thought, instead of the dry way of presenting, oh, we had 500 beneficiaries, 500 survivors were given access to medical care. No, so every chapter started with a beautiful quote from one of the survivors, speaking of how being a part of the program changed their lives. So that is a great way, like using a quotation or asking a question. Look at even some of the work online that you have read. And these days, like on social media, they like to use a lot of quotes. Like they would use like words from maybe Martin Luther King or from Einstein, but it's impactful. It stays with you. And technical reports, we can start them in that way as well. Or just giving an example, a scenario could be, imagine having nothing to eat. Imagine having to walk 60,000 miles to access clean water. This is what persons living in rural so-and-so has to go through on a daily basis. This is what our program is trying to alleviate. That is a far more interesting way to talk about a subject than each day 50,000 persons have to walk out.
Yeah. And I understand why people, you know, people are afraid to do that because they've never seen it done, and One of the best lessons I ever had. I was doing a writing workshop in Hanoi for UNDP, and oops, I shouldn't have said that. And I was talking a lot about plain English, right? And a woman came up to me at the break, and she said, you know, I really like what you're saying. I really want to write like that, but my boss won't let me. Okay.
Yeah.
And writing is also a form of power in many ways. One way it's a source of power is I'm the boss, you write the way I tell you. Okay.
Yeah.
I don't. That's not academic enough. I want you to write. You know, that's too informal, too conversational. You know, it's like you need to write more academic.
Yes.
I'm over you by telling you how to write. At all concerned about the reader who doesn't want to read that, probably, you know, who would be very happy with the conversational style, but I can't be bothered to think about that. So
Yes. Yeah, very important point indeed. We have to keep in mind the power dynamics at work, and especially sometimes when you have house styles even. So some organizations not only tell you what font size to use, but they tell you the use of language as well.
There's nothing wrong with passive voice. Passive voice has very appropriate uses. Okay, if you're writing the method section of a technical report, then you can say, you know, the data was collected in several villages. You don't have to say by who, because it's not important in that context. Okay. And you constantly are hearing people say, oh, use the active voice, use the active voice. Yeah, okay, as a general rule of thumb, but, you know, passive voice has good uses, so don't throw it out. What I'm doing here with this action figure thing is, okay, this is an example of plain English. Well, actually, what's there is not plain English. Okay, the project will map out. You just have to say the project maps out. The project maps the economic and political drivers, right? So you get rid of the auxiliary and the superfluous word, and just strip the verb down to the basic form in a lot of cases. And what you have then is a strong verb. Rather than all things hanging off it on the front and the back that don't need to be there. So strong verbs, that's actually from the section on strong verbs. The project maps economic and political drivers, right? Bang, maps them, right? One comment, somebody said, my first language is Arabic, and we write very long sentences, and that's a problem when I'm writing in English. There is interference. There is such a thing as first language interference, okay? And there are characteristic grammatical patterns in every language, and they can interfere with your writing in a second language. So I just think it's, I mean, I struggle with Thai, okay? I speak Thai kind of, you know, blah blah, which is snake snake, fish fish, and I'm learning now to read Thai, and I really struggle with it. For people who write in another language, I mean, people who grew up speaking Farsi or Swahili or you know, something else, and write academic papers and proposals and reports in English, I think is an astounding achievement. I just, it's a marvelous intellectual achievement to be able to do that, you know. I someday I hope I can write, you know, Dick and Jane in Thai.
Yeah. All right. We have to wrap up a little bit, but quickly, Terry, if persons want to find you, how can they get in touch with you? And about your book?
Yeah, okay, there's my email address is there. I'm on LinkedIn. And my website's there. Thank you very much for doing that, Anne. And the book, yeah. It's a short book. It's on Amazon as an ebook or a print book. Thank you so much.
Yes, thank you, everyone. You know where to find Terry, and you most certainly know how to find me.
Yeah.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Okay, bye.